Hey, today we're going to go look at the Wills St. Clair Museum in Marysville, Michigan, all about the Wills St. Clair car. In fact, they have the largest conglomeration of Wills St. Clair cars on the planet. Anyway, it's in Marysville, Michigan, just a little north of Detroit, south of Port Huron. Nice little museum, well worth the stop, although you have to kind of plan because they have very limited hours. But nice museum. Let's go take a look and see what they've got.
The Wills St. Clair has what I think is the prettiest emblem of any car ever made. Here's the Canadian goose emblem flying over a lake with some pine trees. Very serene. As we pan up, you can see that the Canadian goose is also carried over onto the hood ornament. There's a Canadian goose flying right at you. That's not worrisome at all. Anyway, let's find out a little bit more about this car. The story of the car is really the story of the man behind the car. This is C. Harold Wills, all-around master mechanic, engineer, and metallurgist. His career really takes off when he meets Henry Ford. This is about 1902, and at this point, Henry Ford is working on a couple of race cars, 999 and Arrow. Ford's plan is to win races, gain publicity, and then parlay that publicity into investors for a new company, which would become the Ford Motor Company. So far, we're at step one, build race car. That's where Wills comes in. Wills and Ford meet and immediately hit it off. Ford brings Wills in on the project. The two men work on the design in an unheated second-floor shop in Detroit, occasionally taking breaks to box to keep warm. The cars were a success. 999 went on to win races across the country. Arrow set the world's speed record with Henry Ford at the controls, racing across the frozen waters of Lake St. Clair. Ford gets his backing and is able to start his company, and of course, C. Harold Wills is right there with him. Of course, Wills is right there and is probably Ford's first employee. Wills helps to take Ford's visions and turn them into practical products. It's been said that in the design of all Ford models in the company's first decade, it is impossible to disentangle Ford's work from that of Wills. Charles Sorensen said that without Harold Wills' perfectionist mind, the early Ford cars could not have been of sufficient mechanical excellence for the evolution into the Model T. Among Wills' many accomplishments are the design of the planetary transmission that was used in the Ford. Also, he's the man behind the introduction of vanadium steel. That's often cited as one of the reasons why the Model T was so rugged. Here's some trivia for you. One of Wills' early hobbies was calligraphy. Eventually, he took Henry Ford's signature, made it more neat and fancy, and came up with this. Yeah, that's C. Harold Wills' handwriting. Once the Model T was well into production, Wills grew restless with the static nature of the Model T design and dreamed of something more challenging. By 1918, Wills was a wealthy man. In addition to his generous compensation, his contract also included a share of Henry Ford's personal stock dividends. Here he is with his family on the deck of his personal yacht, the Marald. The museum has a nice little model of it. At one time, this was the fastest yacht on the Great Lakes. This is, definitely a rich man's toy. Here's the baby Marald. It can go a little bit faster. Wills got involved in boat racing for a time, too. Hey, if you got the money, might as well enjoy it. Ford and Wills parted ways in 1919, but by all accounts it was on good terms. The two men were friends. In fact, Henry Ford had been best man at Wills' wedding. Wills took fellow Ford man John R. Lee with him, but Ford took it in stride. He said, "It's my fault. They are very able men, and you've got to keep something inside ahead for men of that type. I wasn't able to do it, and they can't be blamed for going into it for themselves." When he left, Ford bought out Wills' dividend agreement for just under $1.5 million. He had made another $4 million in steel investments. This is all in 1919 dollars, remember. Wills wanted to start his own car company, and for a location he chose Marysville, Michigan, on the shores of the St. Clair River, just south of Port Huron. He had scouted the location from the back deck of his yacht, because why not? He just had to do one last thing before he started work on his factory. He took the unincorporated town of Marysville and plotted out almost 2,900 residential lots for workers. He built municipal buildings, playgrounds, roads, and brought in utilities. He brought in sewer, water mains, and electric lights. He invested $3.5 million just in town infrastructure. The car he had in mind was going to be aimed at the upper end of the luxury market. He had his sights set on the three Ps: Peerless, Packard, and Pierce Arrow, the companies that dominated the upper end of the line in those days. The car was going to be the Wills St. Clair, named after himself and the St. Clair River. But we're going to spell it with an extra E on the end of Saint and an extra E on the end of Clair for extra fanciness. The overhead cam V8 engines took design inspirations from the powerful Hispano-Suiza aircraft engines. Hispano-Suiza cars, by the way, have these beautiful stork mascots. Here's one here. May have also inspired the Wills St. Clair logo. Here's the Canadian goose that we're familiar with. The early St. Clair cars had remarkable lighting for the time. Let's take a look at this one. These headlights are Miro tilt. The brochure says that at the fingertips of the driver, he has a control that can either deliver a shaft of all-revealing light or one blended with a parabolic reflector for more suitable city driving. An early courtesy to other drivers. Here, by the way, is that Hispano-Suiza-inspired overhead valve V8 engine. Let's continue looking at lighting. Here, you see this little light here on the cowl that will illuminate the running board and area on the ground there. Very nice for getting in and out of the car. The most groundbreaking piece of car lighting here is actually around back, something that you take for granted, but here on the Wills St. Clair is an industry first. When you put the car in reverse, there is an automatic backup light that comes on. That's that clear one next to the red one. This had not appeared on any car before the Wills St. Clair. The car, by the way, is a very snappy-looking 1921 rumble seat roadster with the disc wheels. Here's the kind of car I like to see. This is a 1922 7-passenger sedan, but this one looks like it's still wearing the original paint and upholstery. Let's take a little closer look at that patina. Although this car is only the second year in production, by this time the company was already in trouble with $8 million in debt. The company was reorganized the following year and started to find a little footing. I think this is original upholstery. Look at that. Nice car. Jeez. Anyway, one of the problems that they reportedly had was that Wills was a perfectionist and would often stop the entire production line if he thought of a little bit of an improvement. Didn't stop him from producing some fantastic looking cars, though, like this 1925 W6 Traveler with the dual windshields. That's really fancy. Anyway, by this time, there's actually a 6-cylinder engine that's an inline 6 that was maybe a little bit easier to work on than the V8. Fortunately, the 6 was just a little bit heavier than the 8, but it did have better torque and acceleration. In 1926, a Wills St. Clair broke the San Francisco to New York speed record. That was kind of a big deal. The Wills St. Clair company and the Wills St. Clair car really had everything going for it. Everything except just one thing that they needed: a profit. Let's pause for just a moment and admire this 1925 Wills St. Clair town car. With body by Willoughby, this is the only one that was ever made and the only surviving Wills St. Clair town car of any kind. This particular car was displayed at the 1925 Auto Salon. Here are some pictures from it. That's in New York City. The car was bought right off the salon floor by the widow of Horace Dodge. Unfortunately, both the Dodge brothers had died in 1920. Here's a nice 1926 Cabriolet Roadster. The company was on the ropes by this point, and the following year, 1927, would see the company sold off in parts. Chrysler bought the building. Oh, here's another 1926 Cabriolet Roadster, but this one is a little different than the last one. It's in the process of being restored. This is super cool because you get to see all the wood that goes underneath the body. Cars of this era, and even more so earlier, are really wooden bodies with metal sheathing over them, and you get to kind of see underneath that here to kind of get a glimpse of what that looks like. Super cool to see. I'd like to point out a couple features on this 1926 Roadster. See this metal thing that covers over the radiator? This is actually an aftermarket accessory. I've even seen these on Model Ts. This is a winter cover to kind of cut down on the amount of cold air that's being drawn across the radiator when you're driving in the north in the winter. You would think someone who owned an expensive rumble seat Roadster with the golf bag door and everything wouldn't really have driven it in the winter. But this car is a little different. There's a little tag here on the dash. Not sure if you can make this out, but what it says is Jack L. Allen, original owner, 350,000 miles. Well, that's certainly a testament to how well built this car is and to Mr. Allen for maintaining it. Don't let anybody tell you that old cars can't be reliable. Here's another car with purported to have over 300,000 miles on it. This is another 26. This is a 5-passenger sedan. The original owner apparently used it to take his travel trailer out to Arizona and back. That must have been quite the rig. This thing is in beautiful, unrestored condition. I don't know. I just love to see cars like this with the original upholstery, even if it is just a little ratty-tat-tat. Actually, this one is pretty well preserved. Looks like a real barn find. And like any good barn find car, we've got extra parts in the back seat. If you do want to see this one all restored, all nicey nice, you can vote. See which side can give more money to the museum. This might be a trick. Never mind. It all goes to a good cause anyway. Put $1 in on each side. Make it look like a real race. If you like nice cars, we got plenty of those. Here's a 22 that's an earlier one, Roadster. I really like the fancy detail on the back side of the fender-mounted rear view mirror on this one. You got the dual cowl lights up there, the tasteful two-tone brown that I think really works here. Actually, three-tone if you count that the top material. The more I look at this one, the more I really like it. This is a nice car. Here's another Roadster. This one's a little bit newer. This is a 26, so we got a little bit different lines here. It looks a little bit longer than that two-tone brown job that we just looked at. That was a 22. Here's a neat little comparison. What we're looking at is a Model T Ford frame that C. Harold Wills would have been very familiar with. Next to this, we have a Wills St. Clair frame. So you can see when he left Ford to start his own company, he really went an entirely different way. It's just no comparison between these two cars. We got a lot of cars over in the storage area. These are a lot of club members' cars that are just in storage. And we've got racks of future projects and other cars sitting over here. Looks like they've got some unrestored and barn find cars all natural back here. Broken windshields and all, just sitting on racks. I'm not really sure what the museum's plans are for all of these, or even if they own all of these. These may be some members' projects that are waiting some attention. This is why I shouldn't be given a lot of money. Barn would look like this, just racks of project cars. From what I can tell, these are mostly Wills St. Clair, I think, although there are some competitive cars back here. If we come around over here, we can see... Oh yeah, that's a Pierce Arrow. You can always tell the Pierce Arrow when you look at the headlights. See those headlights kind of flared into the fenders? That's sort of a Pierce Arrow trademark. Looks like a really nice car, but this would have been a competitor to the Wills St. Clair, although this would be a few years newer. That was a 1932. Over here, we've got a Packard. You can tell very easily by the shape of the grille and, of course, that classic Packard hood ornament. I've always called it a tombstone-shaped grille, but other people call it an ox yoke shape. Lieutenant Dan over here is another Wills St. Clair in for some minor rear-end work. Back on the road soon, I'm sure. Hey, here's a 1949 Divco. We all like Divcos, don't we? Of course we do. Anyway, the Divco was a long-running delivery van. You can see it is a stand-up operation. There's really nowhere for you to sit. You just stand there as you drive. Nicely done interior. Actually, a really nice job here. The cooler box next to the driver is kind of a rarely seen accessory. That's nice. Hey, it's not just land vehicles here. We've also got an interesting boat to take a look at. This is a 1930s Garwood. Garwood was a major builder of speedboats and utility boats in the sort of pre-war period. They had a massive plant in here in Marysville. The company was owned by Garfield Wood, or Garwood for short. At one time, he had also owned Chris Smith and Sons boat building company. They went on to become Chris Craft. Here's a car you probably haven't seen. This is a Havers, a 1911 Havers. They were built near Marysville up in Port Huron, Michigan. They started in 1911. In 1912, they moved into the old EMF plant that had shut down. Unfortunately, in 1914, that plant burned down and they never really got going again. So, only made from 1911 to 1914. I am told there are only two 1911s still extant, and the other one is not in as good a condition as this one. So, extremely rare car here. I was actually a little surprised by this car. For 1911, there's a lack of brass showing. What you do have is painted black, which would have been advanced. I like the rear suspension with the sort of outbound mounted transverse leaf spring. As a nod to Wills's history with the Ford Motor Company, the museum does have this really nice little replica of the Ford quadricycle. I don't know. I've seen other ones of these. They're always really neat to see. Anyway, here's one. Looks like it was nicely done. Anyway, after the Wills St. Clair ceased production in 1927, Harold Wills went on to other projects. He worked on the Ruxton, which was an early front-wheel drive car, then went on to be a consulting metallurgist with Chrysler. Unfortunately, in 1940, at the age of 62, he suffered a massive stroke. He died at the Henry Ford Hospital in Dearborn.
Well, that was the Wills St. Clair Museum in Marysville, Michigan. Again, that's just north of Detroit, south of Port Huron. If you're anywhere in the area, it's a great stop. Do check their website, though, because they have very limited hours. Anyway, I'm going to be at the Enthusiast Auction, Worldwide Auctioneers, down in Auburn, Indiana, last week in April. So maybe I'll see one or two of you there. Otherwise, I'm going to try and show you some of the great cars that they've got auctioned off there. If you want to check out some of my other videos, there should be a link right about there to bring you to some of my other great videos. If you want to subscribe to the channel, and I recommend that you do, there should be a link right about there to subscribe to the channel. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.